Welcome to Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barito. Let's take a look at the headlines. The Prime Minister calls on citizens to be mindful of each other. The Minister of Works praises anti-crime collaboration. And the Savanetta boys take on Houston Dynamo in CONCACAF Champions League. Thank you for joining us to our top story. In marking World Humanitarian Day 2013, Prime Minister the Honourable Kamla Persad-Bissessor is calling on citizens to be mindful of each other as brothers and sisters in the human race. As part of her message commemorating the Global Day, the Prime Minister says, as a nation, we have much to be grateful for.
Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessor says Trinidad and Tobago's geographical positioning below the hurricane belt is much to be grateful and reminded us how fortunate we are, citing the number of persons who died in the floods in China, as well as the scores of prisoners killed in Egypt in recent days, as well as a train crash which claimed a number of lives in Spain. The Prime Minister, in commemoration of World Humanitarian Day 2013, reminded the nation of its blessings as around the world tragedies were happening every day. She says while storms and hurricanes bear down on the Caribbean each year, Trinidad and Tobago has been spared, while our CARICOM neighbors such as Haiti and Jamaica have bore the brunt of violent hurricanes in the last few years. Nevertheless, the PM says because of this, Trinidad and Tobago has been in a position to assist our neighbors within the region, recounting the helping hand this country's regiment was able to lend Grenada when Hurricane Ivan caused severe damage, as well as the regiment's role in restoring stability to Haiti in 1994 through the United Nations peacekeeping efforts during its political strife era. However, the PM says while Trinidad and Tobago has had its share, recalling the big floods of August 2012, she says citizens must be reminded that we are not immune to disaster. While several citizens suffered millions of dollars in losses, the country was able to respond through available emergency units such as the Office of Management and Disaster Preparedness and the Red Cross Society of Trinidad and Tobago. She notes the ability of a people to unite despite political divide makes us unique, and notes that Trinidad and Tobago are not with selfish people. Evident of this, the Prime Minister notes, is a bravery displayed when two men jumped into the Cayman-infested Guayamare River to rescue a motorist whose car plunged into deep waters. She describes this as a display of true humanitarian work by citizens. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Persad-Bissessor called on the people to help find a solution for all the violence in the East Port of Spain district. She notes while many may think that crime is kept in and around East Port of Spain, it is something which affects us all. She says having a passion for people to assist those in need is what being human is all about, while at the same time creating a better Trinidad and Tobago for generations to come. In marking World Humanitarian Day 2013, she called on citizens to keep that commitment of love for our fellow brothers and sisters. This year, the UN celebrates World Humanitarian Day with a new project called the Word Market. The project created a marketplace for words in order to raise funds for humanitarian aid through the Global Humanitarian Fund. Participants in the project can help by tweeting the hashtag #TheWorldNeedsMore along with a hashtag for the word you want to sponsor. Participants can also share the same hashtags on Facebook or even sponsor a particular word through a donation via PayPal, an online payment service. However, only the words that appear on the sponsored page will generate funds for this project. Kimberly Calawan, News 4.
As the Prime Minister continues to meet with residents in East Port of Spain in a bid to address their concerns, there are hopes that everyone will play their part in helping to put a stop to crime. Minister of Works and Local Government, Dr. the Honourable Surajratan Rambachan, says he hopes the persons who can fix the crime problem will put country first.
The government is committed and will remain committed to doing all that it can to end crime. This is the promise being made by Minister Rambachan as he addresses the media at a recent road rehabilitation event. Dr. Rambachan suggests there is no longer any more time for talks and theories as something must be done now. The minister praises the Ministry of the People and Social Development for its programs and adds that while crime has many causal factors, work must begin somewhere.
We have been doing studies after study about why the upsurge in crime. I think we have a lot of information now about why crimes are occurring. And like the Prime Minister is doing, we are beginning to put the legislation in place. Dr. Ramadas Singh, to his credit, is a minister who has been putting a lot of social programs in place and a lot of support structures in place. So support structures for families, support structures for individuals, in order to change the quality of the environment in which people find themselves. And I think that his work is already beginning to bear fruit, as will the initiative of the Prime Minister.
Speaking about the recent decision by the Prime Minister to hold talks with the opposition leader on parliamentary consensus over crime-fighting legislation, Minister Lambachan expresses his optimism that all parties will disregard political views and allegiances and instead focus on national development.
One is very hopeful that in a situation like this, in which the country's interest comes first, and the People's Partnership Government has always put the interests of the country first. This is why we have never been afraid to bring strong pieces of legislation, despite the fact that our legislation on the Capital Punishment Bill was defeated. We said that we will come back with legislation and we'll work towards getting the support of the opposition. And that is why I say again, the Prime Minister has to be commended on the leadership she is taking in this regard to ensure that everyone is involved and everyone has a say in determining the quality of legislation that comes to the fore.
Minister Lambachan is refusing to confirm if capital punishment will return. He says while it has been proposed by some sections of society, it will be thoroughly examined before determination is made on its return. Gregory McBurney, News 4.
When we come back, Energy and Marine Tobago Cape grads can look forward to scholarships. Stay with us. Friendly societies in Trinidad and Tobago ought to be guided by the Jamaica example. Minister of Labour and Small and Micro Enterprise, the Honourable Errol McLeod, said as he delivered the feature address at the Friendly Society's annual conference and parade at the Campo Vibes restaurant in Chaguanas.
Under the theme Networking for Success, this year's conference marked the 195th anniversary of the Friendly Society's movement in Trinidad and Tobago, which accounts for 153 registered societies with a collective membership of approximately 30,000 and an asset base of more than 30 million. Minister McLeod said it was imperative that the local movement engages its regional counterparts with a view of observing the operations and successes of other societies. This, he said, will ensure it remains sustainable and keep abreast of changes within the global society.
Friendly societies served as a critical source of assistance for the less fortunate and the working population. And this reminds me that a couple months ago, I addressed the Takaful Friendly Society. Yes. And I was suggesting that friendly societies flourished many years ago when societies, our communities, were friendlier than they are today. And we have to face fact, you know. We have to face fact, and we must voluntarily face those facts, or we will be forced to face in those facts when circumstances change.
In reference to the region, Minister McLeod acknowledged the existence of 800 registered and active friendly societies in Jamaica and reflected on key and beneficial elements he felt Trinidad and Tobago could learn from.
And I remember, was it the year before, 2011, at your conference in Tobago, the Jamaicans were invited and they participated. I had an excellent time hearing and learning from the experiences of our brothers and sisters in Jamaica who seem much more advanced than we are insofar as the Friendly Societies movement is concerned. And I wish to applaud you on having gone to Jamaica on the invitation of our brothers and sisters there.
Minister McLeod advised that local friendly societies diligently pursue a course of engaging the public and the private sectors, as well as charitable organizations and NGOs, on the possibilities for partnerships.
In Richard Nappy Myers' song, Bring Back the Old Time Days, bring back them old time ways, bring back the friendly society, bring back Gayap, bring back neighbor helping neighbor, bring back the village being responsible for the growth and development of the child. It is when you are small and you are without the resources that we have today that you recognize the worth of the friendly society.
A friendly society is an unlimited number of persons who join together to achieve a common financial and/or social purpose, and is meant to cultivate the practice of thrift, self-reliance, self-help, and assist in fostering community spirit, poverty eradication, and nation building. In recognizing the challenges of the friendly societies, the minister noted declining membership, its growing disconnect with young people, its slow transition toward a globalized knowledge-based economy, and the competitive appeal of cooperative societies and credit unions. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
In other news, school children and teachers attended yet another tour of Nelson Island, the place where the reenactment of the arrival of East Indians to this country took place. The tour was put on by the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth, Gender and Child Development.
The event was part of a series of activities planned by the ministry. The students boarded the water taxi in Port of Spain, in the company of teachers, lifeguards, and law enforcement authorities. Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration officials were also on board.
And I also want to take the opportunity at this point to thank the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Child Development for this wonderful partnership that we had to enable you to know a little more about our heritage sites.
Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Diversity, Jacinta Bailey Sobers, told students a little bit more about this initiative, and she also spoke about the history behind the heritage site on Nelson Island.
The responsibility of the Ministry of National Diversity and Social Integration has to do with heritage sites like these. We have 381 such sites identified. I'm sure you didn't know that. I'm sure there is also a heritage site, which is really a site that has history behind it. It has historical significance, and some people might say that certainly most places have a history behind it. But we are talking about history that is of significance. And this site that you just visited is one of the most significant historical sites because it was regarded as the gateway to this country where our Indian brothers and sisters came through. The Africans also had a role to play here. You saw all the different groups. The Jews had a role to play here. Yes, so it's really an important site that you visited, and you should not forget what you learned.
The vessel journeyed to Nelson Island and docked, where the students disembarked. They then received a tour of the island and the historical sites on it where our first indentured laborers stayed. The island is rich in history, and the students as well as the teachers were extremely eager and excited to be a part of the learning experience. After the much anticipated tour on board the vessel, students received a tour of the other islands. And on the way to Port of Spain, the children were entertained to a wide variety of cultural expressions. The accommodation at Nelson Island was expanded towards the end of the 1870s to cope with larger numbers of people. On the island and in the holds of the immigrant ships, an indelible bond was formed that transcended considerations of caste and creed, and was known as Jahaji, the Brotherhood of the Boat. It was a kinship of a strange people, brought by fate to a distant place, many never to return to their homelands in the Indian subcontinent. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Energy and marine-oriented students who would have successfully completed their CAPE examination can look forward to scholarships from the Ministry of Tobago Development to continue educating themselves in those fields so that they will be qualified enough to return to Tobago and assist in developing both sectors.
Minister of Tobago Development, Dr. Delman Baker, has promised to award outstanding Tobago CAPE students with scholarships to assist them in furthering their education, particularly in the energy sector. Speaking at his office after a meeting with Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine, Minister Baker said he is awaiting official word from the Education Ministry on the performance of Tobago students.
I hope the numbers this year are better than what we saw in the last couple of years. But we at the Ministry and through its Human Capital Development Unit will seek to improve those numbers through the oncoming. I also have with me my scholarship officer.
Dr. Baker says while the energy sector is being developed in Tobago, the marine sector is following closely behind.
The marine sector is important too. As you know, we wanted to bring in the yachting industry. The fueling stations can be co-located in a marina type facility. And that brings a new tourism niche market to Tobago that can then grow and provide additional support for the weakened tourism sector on the island.
He says his ministry is serious about developing Tobago to its fullest potential and not only talk about development. Minister Baker pledged to act upon all that was promised to Tobagonians in order to sustain Tobago's economy. Reporting from Tobago, Natoya Johnson, News 4.
When we come back, W Connection take on Houston Dynamo. Stay with us. The unfortunate withdrawal of the national under-15 team from the CONCACAF Championship in the Cayman Islands has fans and parents questioning the support for the sport from governmental organizations. In a release from the Ministry of Sport, it was made clear that it has overextended itself to support football. To date, the Sport Company of Trinidad and Tobago has provided funding of approximately $9 million to the development of football, whilst the Ministry of Sport has also provided funding estimated at $2 million. The Ministry of Sport has also given $4 million in support of the TT Pro League. The article in the Trinidad Express dated Saturday, 17th August 2013 on page 55, as it relates, the Under-15 Championship was never a budgetary item to the Sport Company. It was a last-minute request. The following are some of the ministry's undertakings for fiscal year 2012 to 2013. Assistance to TTFF for Men's Senior Team Gold Cup Qualifier. Assistance to Under-17 Men Tour to Colombia. TTFF Men's National Beach Football Team engagement in Bahamas. Assistance to TTFF for preparations for Gold Cup qualifiers. And much more. The ministry will continue to support football in any given way based on the availability of the relevant resources. In other sporting news, the players of TT Pro League outfit W Connection FC have only themselves to blame as they failed to grab a vital 3 points in their CONCACAF Champions League match versus the Houston Dynamo on Monday. The game, which was contested at the Hazley Crawford Stadium in Port of Spain, was the first home outing for the Savanetta boys, but the advantage was wasted. Wayne Cunningham has more.
Following an opening round 3-1 loss away to Aribe Unido in Panama, W Connection FC needed a win versus Houston Dynamo in their second match to stay in contention for a quarter-final spot in the CONCACAF Champions League 2013-2014 tournament. The Savanetta boys had an MLS outfit on the back foot early, but it was a sign of things to come when Marco Delia missed this easy chance. Houston also had some chances, with Cam Weaver causing the most problems. Where the Italian Delia was a disappointment for W, the Brazilian Celia da Silva was an inspiration with his deft passing and confidence on the ball. But the downfall on the day for Stuart Charles Furvier's team was the finishing, with the normally dangerous teenager Neil Benjamin missing an open goal late in the match. The Houston Dynamo will be happy for the 0-0 draw and hope for a better showing in the return leg on September 25th. Up next in the Champions League for local fans will be Caledonia AIA versus Comunicaciones of Guatemala on Thursday 29th at the Hazley Crawford Stadium. Wayne Cunningham, News 4 Sports.
News 4 continues right after this. Food Production Minister, the Honorable Devant Maharaj, has announced the establishment of 5 stations to help combat predial larceny that will be manned initially by a predial larceny squad. The squad, comprising 76 members of the Special Reserve Police, was launched at a 3-month induction training program.
After considerable evaluation of the pilot project and taking into consideration the challenges experienced, the Ministry of Food Production is now ready to roll out this nationwide initiative. The pilot project, for those of you who may not recall offhand, was the Ranger Squad located at Carson Field. And that small band of Rangers, we don't have any lone Rangers up there, but a few Rangers, that they were able to significantly impact and reduce criminal activity in the Carson Field area.
Plans are in motion, the minister says, to establish similar stations across the country. All stations will be opened on a 24-hour basis. The officers on the induction program will be trained in report writing, arrests, care and custody of prisoners, trespassers, and in the Predial Larceny Act 2000. They will also be trained in the use of firearms.
Over the next 3 months, 4 SRP sergeants, 12 SRP corporals, and 60 SRP constables will be trained in areas such as report writing, arrest, care, and custody of prisoners, trespassing, and the Predial Larceny Act, for example. They would also be trained in the use of firearms and undergo on-the-job training where they would gain hands-on experience.
The training program and establishment of the squad was a collaborative effort between the Ministry of Food Production, which will be responsible for the administration of the squad, and the National Security Ministry, which will be responsible for training, recruiting, and dealing with matters of performance and discipline.
Officers will work on a 24-hour shift basis throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad. In the interim, 5 stations located at Carson Field, Centeno, Felicity, Eugene St. Madeleine have been identified. Plans are currently in motion to establish a similar station elsewhere. All offices will be open to the public on a 24-hour basis to serve farmers within the designated catchment areas.
Stressing the importance of the need for such a squad, Minister Maharaj said, over the years, the nature of predial larceny has changed, with incidents becoming more frequent, larger volumes of crops and livestock are stolen, and behavior has become highly organized and often violent. This results in unsafe, unsure, and unsustainable environment for our nation's farmers. Noting that crime takes many forms, he said, we are determined to take a zero-tolerance approach to all forms of crime, including larceny. To help alleviate predial larceny, he noted that the Agricultural Development Bank is offering loans for CCTV cameras for farm security at reduced interest rates. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you for joining us.